Criminal Procedure Code has laid down provision that gives the power to not just court but also public prosecutor to transfer cases from one jurisdiction of the court to another jurisdiction of the court. There are two types of transfer that can be made. It's either lateral and also vertical. And the rationale behind the transfer of cases is due to the fact that when the court thinks it's necessary and the current jurisdiction of court is not adequate to impose a punishment.
The vertical transfers refers to the transferring of a case from a lower court to a high court, which may or may not be of the same local jurisdictions. One example is the transfer of a case from a magistrate court to a session court or a high court. As referred to in Section 177 of CPC, the phrase higher jurisdictions mentioned in these provisions indicates that the provisions refers to the vertical transfer.
Vertical transfer of case can be found in Section 177 of the CPC. Under this section, there are two important points. The first point is regarding when the case can be vertically transferred. According to this section, a case can be transferred to a higher court at any stage of the proceedings by the magistrate. The word magistrate indicates to both magistrate and session courts. Therefore, a case can be transferred from a magistrate court or from a session court. While the second point under this section is about the parties who can apply for vertical transfer of cases. According to the plain wording of this section, the answer is that the prosecution can make an application before or during the trial, while the magistrate can also transfer the cases at any stage of the proceedings. Notably, the accused is not entitled to invoke this section as he is not mentioned in this section. Besides, Section 177A also provides for vertical transfer of cases, or particularly for the transmission of cases to and trial by the High Court. The procedure under this section is that the consent of the PP must be obtained, and then the magistrate court must transmit the case to the High Court after explaining the charge to the accused. After that, the magistrate court must cause the accused to be brought before the High Court as soon as possible, whereby the High Court will fix a trial date for him. If the PP's consent is not obtained yet, the magistrate court must explain the charge to the accused, and in these circumstances, the accused should not be called to plead. The requirement under this section is that the consent of the PP must be obtained. Such consent can be granted orally or in writing by the PP himself or his DPP. Previously, it was held by the court that the magistrate can only transfer the case to the High Court after he obtains consent from the PP. However, the Court of Appeal in another case pointed out that the step in practice is that the letter of consent from the PP can be produced before the High Court upon the commencement of the trial. Therefore, the current position is that the magistrate can transmit the case to the High Court even though the PP's consent is not acquired yet.
The vertical transfer of cases by the High Court has been highlighted by Section 417, Paragraph BB and Paragraph CC of CPC. Paragraph BB states that the High Court may order any specific case or class of case to be transferred from a criminal court subordinate to it to any other such criminal courts of equal or superior jurisdictions. However, Paragraph CC contemplates a vertical transfer for any subordinate court to the High Court. There are four modes of transfer of case by the High Court. First, the High Court may transfer the case on the report of the lower court. Second, where there is an application by the public prosecutor. Third, on the application by the accused, and finally is by the High Court its own motion. Section 1 of these sections explains that there must be a fair and impartial trial which cannot be held in the subordinate court for the High Court to transfer a case. In the case of PP versus King Singh, the court should exercise the powers of transfer under this section only if it appears to the court that doing so will result in an unfair or unjust trial, or if it otherwise appears to the court be expedient in the interest of the justice. Besides, the case can be transferred from the magistrate to the session court when he is of the opinion that the punishment is not enough to punish. As a result, the magistrate has the authority to refer the matter to the subordinate court. This was confirmed in the case of Tengku Hitam versus PP, where the judge rejected that Section 170 of CPC violates Article 8, Clause 1 because it subjected the accused to the harshest punishments.
Here comes the vertical transfer of cases by the public prosecutor, which involves Section 177, 418A, and 418B of the CPC. By virtue of Section 177, as mentioned earlier, the prosecution may apply for vertical transfer of cases from the magistrate to some court of higher jurisdiction within the consent of the public prosecutor before the trial. According to Section 418A, the public prosecutor shall personally issue and tender to the subordinate court a certificate specifying the High Court in which the case would be transferred to. However, it is subject to Section 418B, where the accused person has not pleaded guilty and no evidence has begun to be adduced.
Another case we can look upon is the case of PP versus Dato' Yapeng, when the public prosecutor gives a certificate under Section 418A that no one may contest it, that his judgment is final and the subordinate court must remove the matters to the High Court upon receiving the certificate. The words "any particular case triable by the criminal court subordinate to the High Court" refers to any criminal case that falls under the purview of the court, regardless of how simple or complicated the case may be. Additionally, to request that a subordinate court transfer any particular matter that is triable by and pending before it to the High Court by issuing a certificate. To fulfill this condition, this provision has given the public prosecutor broad and unrestricted power. Besides, the court also stated that Section 418A should only be deemed invalid if it claims to provide the public prosecutor with the authority to issue a certificate after the trial has started. To put it another way, the legislation is constitutional and valid, but only to the extent that the public prosecutor exercises powers before the trial has begun.
Next, a lateral transfer happens when a case is transferred between courts with coordinated or equal jurisdiction, such as one from a magistrate's court to another. Section 417 subsection 1c provides a situation where a court may transfer a case to another court with the reason that the trial site should be near the scene of the crime. In addition, under Section 417 subsection 1d, the High Court may transfer the matter for the convenience of the trial parties or witnesses. Lastly, the court may order for transfer of a case for the ends of justice as provided under Section 417 subsection 1e. Only when the grounds are met, then the High Court may make an order set out in Section 417 subsection 1aa and bb, whereas CC does not involve the lateral transfer of the case.
One decided case of a lateral transfer is of the case by the Chief Judge of the High Court in Malaysia is the case of Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim versus Public Prosecutor. In this case, the Chief Judge of the High Court transferred the case from the Kuala Lumpur High Court to the Shah Alam High Court. The case involved a challenge by Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim, a political leader, to his conviction and sentence for sodomy. The Chief Judge of the High Court ordered the transfer of the case to the Shah Alam High Court on the ground that it would be more convenient for the parties and witness as the case involved a large number of documents and the hearing was expected to be lengthy. So the Chief Judge also noted that the Shah Alam High Court had the necessary facilities and resources to handle the case efficiently. The lateral transfer of a subject by the Chief Judge of the Malaysia High Court does not change the case jurisdiction. The case will still be heard by a court within the jurisdiction of the High Court that ordered the transfer.
A comparison that can be made between the power of the court and PP in the case of PP against parents, where in this case, the court may act under Section 177 if upon discovery of the fact, he thinks that the case should in fact be tried under High Court. Meanwhile, in the case Lins against PP, the court has rejected the prosecution claims on the grounds that there is no such thing as an unusual difficulty in law. This means that prosecution can only transfer the case before the case is being proceeded and not at any time of the trial without the leave of the court. Another comparison that can be made in the transfer of cases can be seen in the case Dato' Seri Anwar Ibrahim against PP, where in this case, after the case being transferred by the prosecution, the court has the power to amend the charge. Meanwhile, in the case of Fan Newton against PP, whereas the court has transferred the case, the effect of the transfer of case is that all the witness must be summoned against and also all other evidence must be submitted by the court. These are the comparison that can be seen of the transfer of case by the public prosecutor and also the court. In conclusion, both power conferred to the public prosecutor and also courts are rather different depending on the necessity of the cases, effects, and also limitation of the power. Moreover, the rationale that can be seen in the transfer of cases is when the apex court has a flaws and it could be possible cause a substantive injustice, and that is why an alternative transfer cases should be made.